I was just saying, Louis doesn't understand social distancing. So he goes up like wanting to cuddle everything, and particularly any babies younger than him.
There are moments in royal history that no protocol officer plans for. Moments that slip through the carefully arranged choreography of crowns and ceremony, landing quietly in the hearts of everyone watching. Most of the time, these moments belong to kings and queens, to sweeping gestures and solemn oaths. But every so often, the most powerful moment in a royal gathering belongs to the smallest person in the room. That is exactly what happened when 7-year-old Prince Louis, the youngest child of the Prince and Princess of Wales, did something so unexpected, so instinctively graceful, that it stopped the room cold. He bowed his head, not because someone told him to, not because a royal aide had rehearsed it with him 100 times in a palace corridor. He simply bowed, quietly and deliberately, as though something inside him understood the weight of the moment far better than his age should have allowed. Even King Charles III, a man who has spent the better part of 8 decades navigating royal ceremony, paused. For a split second, the monarch was speechless. To understand why that single gesture carried such extraordinary weight, you have to understand who Prince Louis is, where he comes from, and what it truly means to be born into one of the most scrutinized families in the world. Prince Louis Arthur Charles was born on April 23, 2018, St. George's Day, as it happens, the feast day of England's patron saint. The timing felt almost poetic. He arrived at St. Mary's Hospital in London, the same hospital where his brother George and sister Charlotte had been born before him, and within hours, a town crier was announcing his birth to gathered crowds outside. From his very first breath, Louis belonged not just to his parents, but, in some sense, to the world. His full name tells its own story. Louis is widely believed to honor Lord Louis Mountbatten, the beloved great-uncle of Prince Philip, and a man who held a particularly deep place in King Charles's heart. Mountbatten was assassinated in 1979, and Charles has spoken many times about the profound grief that loss caused him. Naming a grandson Louis was a quiet, but deeply personal tribute, a thread connecting the newest generation to one of its most beloved predecessors. Arthur echoes through the middle names of both King Charles and Prince William, rooting Louis firmly in the long tradition of British royal lineage. And Charles, of course, honors the grandfather who now wears the crown. Every syllable of that name was chosen with intention. That is the world Louis was born into, one where even a name carries the weight of centuries. His title, too, was not simply given. Under rules dating back to 1917, when King George V issued a formal decree known as Letters Patent, royal titles were strictly limited. Only the children and grandchildren through the male line of a monarch were entitled to the style of his or her royal highness. Under those original rules, Louis, as a great-grandchild of the late Queen Elizabeth II, would not have automatically qualified. He would have been known simply as Master Louis Cambridge, with no prince's title to his name. That changed in 2012, when Queen Elizabeth II issued her own updated letters patent, specifically declaring that all children born to the eldest son of the Prince of Wales, meaning all of Prince William's children, would hold the title of prince or princess regardless of their position in the line of succession. It was a deliberate, thoughtful act, and without it, the boy the world now knows as Prince Louis would have grown up without a royal title at all. His place in history was, quite literally, secured by royal decree before he was even born. If titles and legal history made Louis a prince, it was his personality that made him a phenomenon. The British public first fell genuinely and completely in love with him at the Platinum Jubilee celebrations in June 2022. Queen Elizabeth II's 70th year on the throne was a momentous occasion, 4 days of national celebration, pomp, and ceremony unlike anything the country had seen in decades. Millions gathered. Dignitaries attended. The world watched. And yet, amid all of that carefully arranged grandeur, the person who captured the most attention was a 4-year-old boy on the Buckingham Palace balcony who simply could not contain himself. Louis waved with his hands pressed over his ears to block out the noise of the military flyover. He pulled faces. He wiggled in his seat. He pretended to drum along with the music, utterly unbothered by the cameras pointed at him from every direction. In a scene full of formal uniforms and practiced composure, he was unscripted, joyful, and completely, gloriously himself. The photographs went around the world within hours. Social media turned him into an instant icon, not mockingly, but with a warmth that was almost overwhelming. People laughed and shared and pointed, saying, "That is exactly what every child would do. That is real." And in that realness, something remarkable happened. The monarchy, an institution that can sometimes feel like a relic behind gilded gates, suddenly felt human again. Louis had done in 30 seconds what no press release or carefully worded statement could ever achieve. His mother, Catherine, Princess of Wales, drew equal admiration that day. Not for what she was wearing or how she stood, but for how she handled her youngest child. Rather than looking mortified or sharp, she leaned in close, spoke gently, redirected him with patience and quiet warmth. She didn't perform good parenting. She simply did it. And the world noticed. What makes Louis so fascinating to watch is not just his energy, but the glimpses of something deeper that occasionally surface beneath it. He is the youngest of 3 children, and in many ways he has the easiest public role. 3rd in line within his immediate family, 5th in line to the throne overall, unlikely to be king. He is, in the traditional sense, free, and yet freedom in the royal family has never been quite as simple as it sounds. At King Charles's coronation in May 2023, something shifted. Louis was there, as he had been at other official occasions, but observers noted a different quality to him that day. He walked with his family with a composure that surprised people who expected another round of endearing mischief. He looked at the ceremony around him with an expression that suggested, even at 5 years old, he understood this was not an ordinary day. He was still a child, curious, restless in the way only small boys can be. But there was a steadiness in him that hadn't been quite so visible before. Then came the bow. At a recent royal appearance, during one of those formal events where every movement is anticipated and analyzed, Louis did something no one in the room was prepared for. He bowed his head slowly, deliberately, with a quiet gravity that was entirely his own. It was not a performed gesture. It was not the mechanical compliance of a child doing what he had been told. It was something far more significant. The natural expression of a boy who, beneath all the charm and mischief, has been paying attention all along. King Charles, a man who has attended thousands of royal engagements over the course of his long life, paused. Those who were present described the moment as unexpectedly moving. An entire room, full of people accustomed to royal ceremony, fell quiet. What does a 7-year-old's bow mean? On the surface, not much. Children bow and curtsy at royal events regularly, but context matters enormously. From a child known primarily for making the country laugh, a child whose public image is built on spontaneity and spirit, a moment of genuine solemnity lands differently. It suggests that behind the playfulness, something is being shaped, quietly, carefully, and well. None of what we see in Louis happens by accident. Prince William and Catherine have approached parenthood in a way that marks a genuine and deliberate break from the emotional austerity that characterized royal child rearing for generations. The history is stark. Queen Victoria was famously cold with her 9 children, believing firmly that children existed to be obedient, not to be nurtured. That emotional distance echoed through the generations that followed. King George VI and the Queen Mother were warmer, but still deeply traditional. Queen Elizabeth II, as a young mother during the early years of her reign, frequently left her children for extended, overseas tours that could last weeks or months at a time. Duty came first, always, unquestionably first. For King Charles, the consequences of that upbringing were deeply felt. He has spoken at various points in his adult life about the emotional isolation of his childhood, about being sent to Gordonstown, a boarding school known for its punishing conditions, and about the absence of the warmth he craved. The royal system, for all its grandeur, could be a cold place for a child to grow up. Princess Diana changed that, with a force of personality that the institution had never quite encountered before. She hugged her boys in public. She spoke to them at their eye level. She took them to theme parks and fast food restaurants and homeless shelters, insisting that they understand the world beyond palace walls. She enrolled them in ordinary schools alongside ordinary children. Her parenting was revolutionary not because it was unusual in the broader world. It was simply what loving parents do, but because within the context of royal tradition, it was radical. William absorbed all of it. He watched his father's emotional guardedness and felt its cost. He watched his mother's warmth and felt its gift. And now, as a father himself, he has made a clear and consistent choice. He drops his children off at school. He attends their events as an ordinary parent, not a royal figure. He talks openly about mental health and emotional well-being. He prioritizes being present over being regal. Catherine brings her own influence. She grew up in a household with no titles, no estates, no centuries of tradition pressing down on her. What she brought into the royal family was balance, the ability to carry herself with grace while remaining fundamentally grounded. Her children do not act rehearsed. They act like children who are deeply loved and appropriately secure. Louis, perhaps more than the others, reflects that freedom in every public appearance. As Louis grows older, questions about his future will naturally become more pressing. He will not be king. He will not carry the burden that sits on George's shoulders, or even the particular complexity of Charlotte's position as the monarch's only daughter. What he will need, eventually, is a role, a title, a purpose, a public identity that goes beyond being the family's most entertaining member. The Duke of Edinburgh title carries particular weight as a possibility. Originally granted to Prince Philip in 1947, it became synonymous with decades of genuine public service. Philip used it to build the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, a program that has touched the lives of millions of young people across more than 130 countries. When Philip passed in 2021, King Charles granted the title to his youngest brother, Prince Edward, as a lifetime appointment. When Edward is gone, the title returns to the crown, and from there, it could go to someone younger, someone who embodies the kind of quiet strength and genuine public service that would honor what Philip built. Louis, with his connection to Philip through Lord Mountbatten, with his natural warmth and his growing sense of grace, would be a fitting choice. Whether that comes to pass depends on decisions that are years away from being made. What is not years away is the evidence already in front of us. In a room full of adults managing appearances and maintaining composure, a 7-year-old boy bowed his head and changed the tone of everything. Even the king couldn't quite find words for it, because some moments don't need words. They simply need to be witnessed.